Sambanani Dumelang. Hello, South Africa. Welcome to Expressions, your hashtag youth #1 current affairs show here on SABC 1. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala. Thank you so very much for joining us. We continue to commemorate and celebrate Youth Month here on the show. And we're going to put a spotlight on young people who are trailblazers and shaping and redefining some of the spaces that they're in. Now, today, we're going to put a spotlight on young people who are in farming and agriculture. Now, the poll question that we're asking you tonight is simply this: what can be done to ensure that we draw young people into spaces of agriculture? Now, our first guest is a phenomenal young woman. She is a third-generation beekeeper. Her name is Mokgadi Mabela. Let's go and meet her. Hello, Mokgadi. Welcome to Expressions. It's good to have you. How did you get started?
It was completely by mistake. My father is a beekeeper. He's always been, but I've never had intentions of being one myself. And I always used to sell his honey. You know, people used to have inferior honey, and because I grew up with honey, I knew that the honey they were having was not so good. So I'd offered to give them, like better honey. And it just kind of snowballed. They were requesting more and more honey, and my dad said, look, I can't keep giving you the volumes that you're requesting. How about you get your own beehive and start making your own honey?
You studied political science, you've got experience in corporate. Talk to us about the transition from being a corporate woman, a city woman, to now being a beekeeper.
I used to work for international relations. That's the degree that I actually studied for. And following that, I had my daughter. And while I had my daughter, that's when, I contemplated increasing the hives that I had. And that's where I decided to make a transition so that I can be able to do something meaningful and not just concentrate on my corporate career, but something where I do continue my father's legacy and also, try to make a living out of it.
What is a typical day for Mokgadi as a beekeeper?
Every day is different depending on what needs to be done. On other days, I wake up in the morning and I go to different apiary sites where I do hive inspections just to check if everything is still in order, the bees are happy, there's still enough food, and also just to decide, when we are moving based on the natural vegetation. There are other days where we are concentrating on sales, so we'll be doing a lot of dispatching of our honey. There are other days where we are actually doing the beekeeping removals.
Being a beekeeper, I'm sure has its challenges. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I'm probably the first, female black young beekeeper. So that in itself has its own challenges because you are finding yourself being a pioneer in a lot of things that you do. There's no referral point, if I may, for somebody with the same profile as you. So that comes with its own challenges. And the usual, access to finance and access to farms. We at Native Nosi are farming without our own farm. We depend on other crop farmers who are ready to host us to ensure that our bees are exposed to having the nectar during the right seasons.
The issue of access to land, how much does that impact you as a beekeeper?
We are not able to operate freely on whichever apiary sites where our bees are. It's always dependent on the landlord, what they are able to allow, what they won't be able to allow. Whereas when we have our own site, we are able to, have as many bees as possible on our site and also do a lot of operations from one central location. Doing it the way we're doing it means there's a lot of overheads, on transport, on fuel, on labor, because you are moving your bees around most of the time and you're packaging from a different location, and all of that has its costs and its implications. Being a young black female beekeeper has its challenges. It also has its own perks because people are also excited, to have a different face in the industry, which is, doing what it's doing, and people are very happy to support you and give you the trust to actually provide services for them, whether it's through beekeeping, whether it's through giving them honey. So that has been, quite refreshing to have people who were actually welcoming.
Mokgadi, how do we draw more young people into the space of farming, agriculture, but I think most importantly into bee farming?
The main reason why we farm is to ensure that there's food, because people eat all day, every day, and that means that when you're farming, you are contributing to food security.
The first thing I think of when I think about bees is, they're going to sting me. So how do you work with them?
I've never been scared of bees because they've always been there all my life. And I look at them as a means to an end, For us, it was more about it securing the money that we needed to actually, grow up with, go to school, put on our lights, pour in petrol. And I don't look at it as bees are scary. I look at it as a means to an end, as a farming activity.
What was the most surprising thing when you transitioned into that space?
I went into it just to make honey. Once I was in there, I realized, oh my goodness, this is a big responsibility. And it's not just about making honey. It's about ensuring, that people have jobs. It's about ensuring that I'm contributing to the economic, playing field in South Africa and also to the agri-sector.
Myriad, tell us a little bit about Native Nosi, how the name came about, but I think most importantly, where we can find your product.
Native Nosi is a name that comprises of two words. Native was talking to a product that's indigenous, that's South African, that's local, that's authentic. So that's why we chose native. And Nosi is a Basotho word for the honeybee. And so that's why I merged the two together so that they could know when they get our product that it's a natural product, it's a pure product, it's a South African product.
So currently, Native Nosi, how long has it been in operation for? Have you employed people?
Native Nosi was started in 2015 of December. So we've been in business for about 3 to 4 years. And we employ about 2 people, and we employ much more casually. So casual is when we're actually doing the beehive removals and moving them to different locations where we need a lot of hands on the ground. Our honey can be acquired from our online store, www.nativenosi.co.za. That's where we distribute our honey nationwide.
So a lot of young people who might have been thinking about being in this space, what would you like to say to them, especially as we commemorate Youth Month, encourage them, motivate them, inspire them?
I'd just like, the youth to know that, this is a space where they can actually make a difference. This is a space that they're very much needed in. And this is a space that we need to own, because we are currently not the farmers of South Africa. We need to be the farmers of South Africa.
Thank you so much for inspiring young people all across this country. From me and the bees and Mokhadi, we will see you right after this.
The average of a South African farmer is about 60 years old. So the first thing that I need the government should do, they must avail funding to youth, and they must make sure that those youth that want to participate in farming, they are passionate about it.
I don't think South African youth find farming attractive. Like, if you look at Tina, we grew up in the farms. Like for me, example. And our youth, we came from the farms into the city. We left the kgomo tsa bo papa rona, masimo a bo papa rona, rata mo ditoropong. And that's how we grew up.
Young people must be educated about what agriculture, the importance of agriculture. We should not just be entertained by this thing. Young people must come into farming without being given the background of what agriculture is and the importance of agriculture.
I think they should introduce that more into the curriculum, actually, to strengthen that in the curriculum, so that they can be into it at the early age.
One thing that South Africa could do is expose farming to a lot of young people, a lot of females. There should be more practical work so that we can know what farming really is.
Siphinde sinibingelele sinamkeleke mbukeli we-Expressions. Namhlanje focus yethu is in the agricultural sector. Njoba sazi ukuthi there have been many calls for abantu abasha ukuthi bangene kulo mkhakha we-agriculture. Kodwa ke they face challenges amaningi, from a lack of funding, a lack of ownership of land, kanye a lack of a market as well. Njoba wazi ukuthi as soon as you get a farm, you still need to get your farm and you must still have a sustainable supply chain. Kungakho ke namhlanje sithelekile Mafikeng sisebakang farm lapho sobe sikhulumisana khona nobhuti Mo Mulemi. Some of you all know him as a rapper, but now he's embarked on his journey of becoming a farmer. So we speak to him about this. Do join me. Let's go meet him. Good Mo. How's it?
Nice to meet you.
All good, sir.
Nice to meet
All
you.
good. Oh,
Yes.
is this the land?
This is our land. Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yeah.
But Mo, now you introduced this amazing Motswako sound, Nabo double HP, and then you leave us, you come and farm, manje. How has it been?
I've always been in the farming business. Right here where we are, in Bakang, is where I grew up as a kid. My dad raised us here as a family. So the farming business was always in my blood. Just by fortunate circumstance, through my education or my younger life, I also met up with I grew up with coolies and the toadies and the jabbas, and that's how I also branched into Motswako. But my destiny was always to work the land.
Officially, you started in 2004, right?
Yes.
Yo, wati wa farmer is sunflower,
Yes.
and on a bank loan, and then there was a drought. Tell us more about that.
That sort of thing happens to farmers all the time, especially now that we are faced with climate change. You know, rains are very uncertain, and harvests are, you know, neither here nor there. But when you're age 22, 23, it can be very daunting to go through such a thing. So you'll find that at most, especially developing farmers like myself, if you get an opportunity to farm and to plant like a crop and you are hit with drought and such a thing, then that could be like the end of you. So it's a very, very fickle industry, and not easy to survive it, but we do.
Tell us more about what you've decided to farm and specialize in.
Yes. Myself, I'm a horticulture guy in the main. I plant vegetables because I also suffer from sinuses and so on. So you find that vegetables are the least dusty and so on. But you know, farming is farming. The environment, as you can see, we've also planted a lot of maize, which become cattle fodder in the dry months because this is a dry area. But with vegetable farming, you'll find that because we are in a rural town like Mafikeng, you can only plant basics: pumpkin, spinach, cabbage, the regular food, unlike salad veggies, which is more urban kind of market. So here in Bakang, in the most, I plant spinach because I have a market for it, and then I have to just move it around the yard where I can rotate. As you can see, this greenery, we're almost at the end, well, we're at the very end of this crop cycle, so we'll be removing it soon, and in spring we'll plant beans, so that we can do a bit of soil rotation for the crops, and then we'll move the spinach to another plot where we just continue with that cycle. So we practically supply schools, we'll supply hawkers in the streets, and then we're also doing a bit of retailing ourselves. What I can say to young people who want to get into farming is we need to do things the right way in a business kind of structure. That is, find the market first, find what the market is trying to buy and it needs, then produce for the market instead of just producing first and then struggling to go find the market.
Okay, now let's speak to young people about the expressions njengamanje. Talk to them about some of the benefits that you enjoy as a farmer.
Yes. Look, farming is more a lifestyle than it is work. Also, what young people don't know is that agriculture is not only about being on the land. There's so much to it. You know, as marketers, as communicators, as lawyers, as scientists, whether you're a crop scientist or livestock scientist, meaning like a lot of careers that don't really have to be on the farm to actually be part of the food business, you know. And the most interesting is the retail business, which I love the most. You know, the retailing of food, as you can imagine, there are 7 billion people around the world. At least they must eat twice a day. So it's not an issue of fashion. It's a must. You know that as a farmer, there is a market for you out there. You must just do the right things to access that market. The biggest challenge with farming is that it is expensive to farm. Agriculture itself could be a solution to creating lots of jobs in a country where we are struggling with unemployment. So it really shows that those who are actually responsible for doing so are not doing enough to really maximize the potential of agriculture so that it creates the jobs we need and stimulates the economy.
So we can expect another hot single, album nyana.
There's an album dropping in a few weeks. I can't tell, but it's...
What, in a few weeks?
In a few weeks. I don't know when, but in a few weeks a full album is dropping. So
Okay, maybe just a little, just from a little birdie, just so they can hear it first on Expressions, just so they can hear it first.
sometimes I feel like I lived through the Holocaust. I feel like I'm an answer, but I don't know who to ask. I feel like I'm living through my passion. Somewhere on this road, that's my satisfaction. Mutsamai.
Yeah. You see, we're not only number one on current affairs, Muntomusha, we also bring you some of the exclusive hits. Now we continue with this all-important discussion, Masbuya. Remember to tell a friend, the hottest current affairs show is somewhere in the land. Back after this. I guess you still with the Expressions, your hashtag #1 youth current affairs show. So Mbugeli, here's a little tale that I'm going to tell you. Now in September 1924, Amahlubi officially arrived in the Northwest, of course coming from the Eastern Cape in Alice. Now they were led by the chief. Now the chief felt that it was very important for Amahlubi to own land, and he came to this realization when he was still in Europe in the war. So when he came back, he had a consultation with these people in which he felt that, you know what, if we can actually trade our salaries, we could own land. So we meet the family of this great, amazing man, and they speak to us about the importance of ownership of land and actually making use of that land. Let's go have a chat with them. I'm so excited. But Luto, you said to me, Abandabasha sometimes don't really take agriculture serious because they feel it's not really glamorous enough for them. What do you think needs to be done in order to attract Abandabasha into the field of agriculture?
I'm part of the fourth generation within this community, Amahlubi, in the Northwest Kwakayakulu. You know, to have a legacy and a heritage that has been left behind to us. And my understanding and appreciation has been based on the fact that, look, here is a history, a very rich one, where many generations before us have managed to, you know, get by and produce and feed their families. And to continue with that legacy, it takes us as young people. But the context now becomes different. The difference now is that there's a business element, there's an economic element to it, there's a technological and innovation element that is brought into play. And those are spaces now that this current generation that I'm a part of, we are beginning to embrace. And I think agriculture has evolved, or at least it's evolving into that.
Tell us about your journey kumkhakha agriculture. How have you found it thus far, njengomuntu omusha? I mean, you're still also, you know, going through the academic aspect of it as well.
I've started agriculture immediately after high school when I enrolled to study in the Northwest University doing crop science. And then I got to realize that there's more to agriculture than what youth think of agriculture, than being in the sun and get your hands dirty. There's technology now, which makes agriculture more easier. There's innovative ideas that are in place. Now, as a young person, I was fortunate enough to get exposure to see agriculture is not just being dirty. There's processing, agro-processing. There's a space of research that I'm also in. There's logistics. There's a lot of sectors within the field in agriculture. So it has been a very challenging but interesting journey.
The importance of being in such a field like agriculture, it also needs patience, doesn't it?
When we started this, you know, there was never any inclinage that would be at a level now where 5 years on, we own tractors that are valued at about 2 million, and you know, our income ratios are sort of close to comparability to people who are in the urban areas, because we are now in a position, slowly and getting there, of paying our young professionals, our operations team, similar to those that are in the urban, if not peri-urban areas. So for me, leadership is critical. More so, that is the leadership structure that is consistent and one that can understand what its role is, as well as ensure that it strengthens, the heritage as well as, the assets that are endowed by those respective traditional communities.
Okay, Sis Rose, I think you should take us through the nitty-gritties, of course.
This is an agronomy crop. First of all, there's a few factors that must be considered before we have this crop. That is your climate, your soil, and of course, availability of water. But then sunflower is a drought-tolerant crop, so it can be grown under dryland conditions. So we started preparing early in the season last year, September, October, November, and then December we started planting. And as you can see, the sunflower is almost dry, ready for harvest. It's about 80% dry and ready for harvest. Then we'll be taking off to our buyers.
Essentially what we mandated to do by the Traditional Council of Amahlubi as the foundation is to industrialize. So bring development into a context, a rural context, but making sure that we are in a position where as we industrialize, we create the necessary jobs by allowing small-scale farmers who can eventually become business owners. I think we are proud to say that over the tenure of this project, we've managed to create about 151 jobs purely from what you are seeing here today.
So, Lucha, I'm going to ask you to speak to us about the challenges that you face in this particular sector.
The sector is not transformed, and as a result, there's no inclusivity, especially given that, as you can see, we are in a very remote area. So the commercial space, whether it be from a financing or technical point of view, they don't know and they can't reach out to the farmer who's out here. So that farmer typically would suffer the consequences of lack of infrastructure, whether it be water that needs to be drilled and or power that needs to be supplied into the area so that irrigation can happen, or for that matter, just purely the market.
What's your parting shot, Nabandabasha? What can you tell them right now? They're watching Expressions. Abanye Babo are thinking, I want to get into agriculture. What's your advice to them?
My advice is there's a need for youth to partake in agriculture. I mean, average farmers are at around 60 years old. So if they're moving out, we must come in. And especially because there's new technology that the old farmers cannot keep up with. So we need youth in agriculture. South African economy need youth participation in agriculture.
Mna bensithi kubantu abatsha mabajonge ukuthi mabayiqonde into yoba thina sisisifundo. There are many others like us. We just have to make sure that we keep encouraging one another.
Well, Mbukeli Expressions, this is how we wrap up Youth Month in a spectacular way, ne? Yeah, I know. Well, one of the reasons why we decided to bring you these stories from exactly where they happen instead of just having the conversation as studio was because we felt ukuthi nawe lapha ekhaya you will look at this and feel inspired. Mbukeli Expressions, it's totally up to you what you decide to do with some of the inspirational cases that we've brought you namhlanje. I was certainly inspired. From Limpopo to Mafikeng back to Rustenburg, it's been a spectacular one. We've really had so much fun. We hope that you also continue the conversation einkundleni zethu zokuxhumana. Khumbula ukuthi sikhona ku Facebook, Twitter kanye na ku Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. From all of us, we wish you a spectacular evening going forward. Insale kahle.